Okay, good morning everyone and welcome along to today's Tide Masterclass, maintaining your mental health while starting a new business. This is our 28th Masterclass and an important and relevant one with World Mental Health Day taking place on Saturday. Really pleased to see a good number of you watching us live, but if you're watching this after the live event, hello to you too and welcome along. Quick tour of Zoom for your users today. We are going to be having a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions, do please get them in using the Q&A button. We'll also be using the chat room. If you have any just general comments, please feel free to put them in there and keep an eye out for links to resources that we'll be discussing later on. My name is Kieran Hawker and I'm the event manager here at Tide. And for those of you who are maybe new to us and what we do, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of our services. So we're the fastest growing online business current account provider in the UK. We currently have over 200,000 members. Our aim is to provide our members with a service that saves both time and money when it comes to business banking. We're great for SMEs and for startups and for freelancers. And as there are no credit checks, startup or monthly fees, this allows you to even try us out alongside your current business account provider and see how we can save you time and money. The sign-up process itself, really simple, really quick, takes between 5 and 10 minutes. And at the end of that time, you'll receive your sort code and account number with your card coming a few days later. The app itself, really simple to use and easy to set up. And we have a huge amount of in-app products that will make your banking life a lot easier. A couple of my favorites, the auto categorization tool, so you can see exactly where your money went and when it went there. And within the account itself, you can split your account into 4 sub-accounts. So you could have a sub-account for your marketing, for your tax, for your events, for your wages, or whatever it is that will help you save time when dealing with your business banking. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit later on about how you can stay up to date with what we're doing here at Tide as a company and our events, and also how we can make it even easier for you to become a Tide member. But for now, we're going to get on with today's masterclass. And I'm really pleased to have our panelist join us today. I'm really honoured that she's given us the time and putting the effort for the presentation. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. So good morning, Alexis.
Morning, Kieran. Thank you. So I'm Alexis. I'm the Managing Director of Fortis Therapy and Training, and I've been in business 8 years, setting up originally a business under a different name that's kind of become Fortis as we've gone through. So really well versed in setting up a small business and knowing all the different things that come with that over the years, really. We provide therapeutic mental health services and emotional wellbeing services to all ages across all sectors. So that can be anything from actual therapy to coaching to mediation to reflective practice to training, wellbeing strategies, all sorts of things. So really anything to do with people, that's our main focus, really.
Fantastic. Like I said, it's really great to have you on. Thank you for taking the time this morning. I think it's going to be a really important discussion, not just because it's World Mental Health Day on Saturday, but just a general discussion about mental health anyway. And I think we all know that things like finance and marketing are important to get in place when running a business. And I think a lot of people maybe tend to forget or put off making sure that what's going on behind the scenes on a personal level is at the right stage as well. Maybe that's a good place for us to start our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are encouraged to write business plans and think about how we're going to finance and where we're going to base our business and how we market it. But there's an awful lot of other things that go on behind the scenes. And what we present out on our media, our socials, and how our websites and everything else is great because that's what the public see, that's what your customers see. But actually, what's going on behind that can sometimes be quite different, and we don't really plan or think about what is it that I actually want from this business, what is it I actually want to do in order to look after myself. We don't kind of think about a life plan, and I think that's really important when you're thinking about a business. So, what is it that you want out of your life with this business? It might be a full-time business, it might be a side hustle, it might be something you're starting whilst you're employed. But all of that is, it takes your time, it takes your headspace, it takes your energy. And it's a fantastic, for me, it's been a fantastic thing to do. But that's not had its ups and downs, it's had its ups and downs. So, think about what's going on behind the scenes, how are you going to keep yourself in mind as well, and what is it that you actually need, where do you actually want to be, and what's your strategy for you on a personal basis. You'll have probably goals and ideas and visions for the business, but it's also about your development. If you're developing, the business develops. If you stop developing, and it's your business, it soon starts to grind to a halt.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what you said earlier about the sort of the outward facing appearance of a business is very similar to a personal outward appearance. Like if you can start to compare yourself to people's Instagram accounts, that's just really, because you don't see them, you know, looking like they're a drowned rat if they come through the door, being like they can walk, all that kind of stuff, you know. So I guess it's the same mentality when you're talking about a business and the background stuff as well.
Completely. It's what you put out there is great, because that's what your brand, that's what you want it to be, that's how you want to be seen. But there's also has to be a recognition and a balance of, you know, what goes on behind those scenes, and the vulnerability that creating a business can give you emotionally, mentally, physically as well. So, you know, how we present outwardly, we all have different masks and personas and things we put on. But it's actually what are you investing in terms of you and your time and what you need in terms of your self-care as well? Because all of that means that this impacts on your business, it impacts on the culture within the business, but it also impacts on family life and friendships and, you know, finances and everything else that goes with it as well. So it's all part of the package, really. And that's not often what we're thinking about when we're setting up a business.
I think also that there might be, you might disagree with this, but I think in some instances, people seeing your sort of behind the scenes story as a business owner can be beneficial as well. You tend to see, or you have seen recently, maybe some people sharing, you know, their family life in Instagram posts when it's about their business, and it gives you that kind of more of a family feel or an open feel to your potential customers as well. And it's a nice way to maybe help with how you're feeling about stuff, and also for people to get more of a personal feel about your industry or your business as well.
Definitely gives you that. I think being authentic, you know, if we're being authentic, actually there's a lot more for people to connect to. Yeah. If we're just using a branding, then how do you emotionally connect to that? You don't. So I think, especially over the last few months, people are kind of like, do you know what, the lines are blurred. We're working from home. There's lots going on. So how can we use that and our own experiences and our own struggles and difficulties sometimes, and also our successes? I think that's really important not to lose sight of, but use that in what we put out there. So it's more authentic and more, you know, it's more emotional, really. People can engage with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, but I guess also having a defining line though, especially working from home, if people are, you know, working in their bedroom or their living room, being able to go, okay, that's my behind the scenes work time, which I need to get into, and then be able to sort of section that off from your family life as well is I guess the important part as well.
Yeah, it's a transition. I think all of these things are about those transitions from what you present and how you're working to then what's going on behind the scenes and how you manage that. If life starts, you know, we talk about work-life balance. If your life balance starts to become really squashed and the time becomes really limited because your work is taking over, then, you know, that you can't keep that going for very long. You know, we only have so much capacity. So kind of being more authentic, recognizing where we're at and what we need, being vulnerable, asking for help, all of those things that we learn as business owners, probably the hard way, are massively important in keeping ourselves on an even keel.
Yeah. Okay, move on to the next slide.
Yeah. So I put this in because I think it's really important. It doesn't change how these emotions feel when you're in this process, but what it does do is mean that you maybe can understand more about what's happening for you and people around you. So setting up a business without having the current background that we're in is risky. You know, it's exciting, it's invigorating, you have a lot more autonomy, you can make your own choices, all of those things, that's all fantastic. But it's also change. It's change for you, it's change for people around you. How you work might be very different to how you've worked previously, and your expectations might be different. So recognizing how you respond to change and also how people around you might respond to change is important. So this is a model done by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it was originally designed around people who have been told that they're going to die. That's actually where it came from. There was 5 stages, and it's been extended to 7 to look at change and transition. So if we know that we go through these processes, you can see there that, I mean, if you can relate this to February, March time, you can absolutely see in broad brushstrokes where we've been as a society. But when you're running a business and you're applying it to that, there'll be things that happen. I think of them as potholes, you know, things that happen along the way that maybe destabilize me or things I saw coming. and I have to kind of figure my way out of it or recover from it in some way. So I know where I am in this process, and it isn't straightforward. So we don't go through from shock, work through each of those really neatly to integration. We might get to feeling quite low in mood and depressed about something that's happened, and then slip back again to feeling angry and frustrated about it, go back into being denial, and then we might move forward again. So this is the process of loss, which is what we're talking about. When we are setting up a business, you're changing life. So you're moving away from something into something new, and you're starting, even if it's a side hustle, you're moving into something that's different. If you've had potholes along the way, which I did, the things I never even saw coming, I know I went through this process, and I would get stuck in feeling frustrated about things. And then, go back into denial, back into frustration, then feel low about it, and then start to think about, right, okay, what am I going to do about it? And in my mind, excuse me, in my mind, as soon as I get into that experimental stage, I know I'm coming out the other side, because I'm thinking, right, okay, I have to take control of this, and I've got to make some decisions. So I have things like, I had to change the name of my business because I had a solicitor's letter, I think it was 20 pages long, the Thursday before an Easter weekend, when I couldn't do anything about it. I had to change the name, debated whether to fight or not, and decided not to. I came away from a business partner, with things that felt fairly solid right at the very beginning, which weren't as we went through. So as soon as you start to move into experimentation and then making decisions, then you start to feel like, right, okay, I've got a way through this. But before that, you can feel quite lost, quite lonely, quite isolated. Also, if you're not surrounding yourself with people who are other business owners, other people don't necessarily understand if they're in an employed role. It's very different. So I think recognizing emotional responses to change, and also thinking about the people around you and how are they responding to change as well, and your change, because you do change when you run a business. You develop as you go through.
Is that the image that you shared here, is that a proven track, or do you find people bringing maybe the sort of experiment depression the other way around, or is that kind of the general flow?
It can be quite messy. Yeah. I often want to do just a squiggly line, because you might not actually from one minute to the next know whereabouts you are, because you might be switching around. You might spend a few days in a particular place, and and that can happen as well. It's very individual. Our processes are very individual, and I think sometimes when we don't as people, there's not many people who really like change. You like change if you're in charge of it, because you've got some sense of agency. But if somebody else is making those decisions, then that's quite difficult. I mean, we're seeing a lot of restructures at the moment, and a lot of people looking to set up business because actually, I've always wanted to do it. I've got an opportunity to do it. Let's do it now. So that's coming to experimentation and thinking about decisions. But it's potentially taken, to get through those first 4 stages there, maybe you've taken weeks to get to that point, and going backwards and forwards and feeling really lost and probably quite low and anxious at times as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to see those stages. Maybe, like we said, maybe you're not going through them in that order, but know that there are stages that lead to something else, and you may have to take a back step occasionally, but that's okay. That's part of the process.
The way I think about it is, when we're facing something that we haven't anticipated and we are going through change, we have natural responses. They don't necessarily feel good. They feel difficult, and and you can lose your footing. But they're a natural response. That I hate the word normal. These normal. Oh, it's a normal reaction. You think, what does that mean? We're all individual, but it is a natural reaction to have some kind of response like this. So I think people listening might think, well, that seems very straightforward and simplistic. But if you imagine, that Mr. Men character, Mr. Messy, kind of connected to all of that, that's probably more accurate, I would say.
need to get clearance to use his image on that, and then you're on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the next bit. There we go.
So one of the things I think I really had to learn when I was setting up the business, and I've still had to continue to learn this, is to recognize what I've actually got control over. So working for myself, I've probably got more control over things than I probably had working for somebody else. So I like that. I like knowing I've got control, but we need to control what is controllable. So that might be us ourselves, it might be our decision making, it might be choosing who we have in our lives, it might be choosing our goals and our progression and where we're heading. So we have quite a lot that we can control, but we also have quite a lot that we can influence. So if we can influence others, if you're looking to get a contract, if you're negotiating a deal, if you're building relationships, you can influence people. And that, again, is a very proactive, positive place to be. You can't necessarily get control of those things, but you can say, for example, you get a contract that's signed and you think, right, great, that's in my circle of control, I can get on with it, because you've built that up and you've got to that point. But the circle of influence for me is the part in business where actually we are ignited as entrepreneurs more than we would be if we were in a business working and employed, because we're not necessarily given as much capacity and responsibility to be able to influence people as much as we would like to. The circle of concern is a far more negative place to be, I would say, that our language becomes quite helpless and we start to worry about things we've got no chance of influencing and definitely no chance of controlling. So if we put that into a macro level at the minute, we've obviously got something in the background in terms of a pandemic that we have a certain amount of control, maybe an influence in terms of how we behave. There's a lot of things we can't influence. Government guidelines coming in and out and changing, those things we can't. Brexit's coming, all these bigger, wider issues. Donald Trump, who I've been watching again this morning in amazement. All of these things are macro worries, really, and they can cause quite a lot of panic. We see that. We see people with different theories about what's happening and distrust and all of these things. Well, if we invest ourselves in this, and social media completely feeds this, if we invest ourselves in this, what it does is create a lot of worry and things that we actually cannot do anything about. So control what you can control and try and let go of and take yourself away from the things that you actually fit into that circle of concern. There's not much you can do about. There's other things that you can maybe invest your time and energy into and avoid thinking about those things too much. Okay.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think having it sort of shown in that image, I think it makes it easier for me to sort of put things into those sort of boxes or circles. I think it's I've not thought about it that way before. That's really interesting.
I think what's helpful with this is almost like having a printout of it and kind of going, if you're in a situation where you think, I can't figure this out, I can't fathom out what I'm supposed to do here, just physically writing it down and doing that in a creative way can help you to really start to kind of recognize what you need to let go of. Sometimes when we've got clients who are very anxious, they are feeding that anxiety from social media, radio in the background, often news articles, all sorts of different things like that, and it's almost looking for that reason to be worried, which I totally understand. It's almost like if I understand it, I feel better about it. But a lot of this stuff we're never going to feel any better about. It's just how it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's a lot to be said about writing stuff down. I'm a big fan of to-do lists and things like that, where you can check off stuff, or you can move like from this, you can move things from circle to circle, or figure out where it is and what needs to be done about it. I think that's it's a really, really nice point. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide.
Okay. So when we're trying to make decisions and we are being logical and rational, we tend to feel quite balanced emotionally. So IQ is our intellectual quotient. So if you were going to do an IQ test and people get, I think it's like 147 or something, is like an amazing IQ. Well, that's great because that's about, your decision making and your logic. But we don't have logic and we're not rational if we're not feeling steady emotionally. So our emotional quotient is just as important as our IQ. So if we are aware of what's going on, we're aware of ourselves, we can recognize what's happening in terms of patterns around us or situations we might consistently keep getting ourselves into them. Looking at our emotional intelligence and our emotional literacy, it really helps us to be able to make informed, clear, logical decisions. Anything from being tired to having had too much coffee or not enough coffee, some of these things impact on how we feel, so therefore it impacts on what we do. So if I was representing this as an iceberg, and generally speaking, we know there's like 9/10 of an iceberg under the water, the 9/10 would be your EQ, and the 1/10 above the water would be your IQ. So that's what people would see, that's what you would demonstrate. Now, when our EQ is starting to suffer, when we're not feeling good, or we're starting to feel unwell mentally or emotionally, we start to see that almost seeping out in our behaviours and in our IQ, so we might make a decision in a heat, an emotional decision. We might be heated, we might be withdrawing from people. There's all sorts of symptoms that we'll talk about in a second that demonstrate that actually emotionally we're not very balanced at the moment, and that's impacting on how we're thinking about things. So from a small business owner's point of view, we're managing all of this and possibly managing people and our social media and our bookkeeping and our banking, and everything's in the mix.
Why start a business? Why would you start a small business?
I'm not selling it very well. It's amazing to do it. There's a lot of benefits, but it is having to really consider some of this stuff because we are in the mix. So the more that we can be aware of ourselves, the better we're going to be. So keeping the balance and recognizing sometimes we're going to be out of balance, and what do we need to do in order to bring ourselves back into balance or back into view almost. I think we can lose sight of ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's really good. But I think, like you say, I think for most people, the IQ, that rational thinking is easy to spot when you're kind of taking a step away from that or losing it slightly. But the EQ stuff, like you say, it sometimes only takes somebody to point it out to you, or for something quite serious to happen before you go, oh yeah, those are the bits I need to work on. So
yeah,
understanding of that balance is really key.
I think as well, having those people around you who will call you out on it, because you're right, sometimes it creeps up on you and you least expect it and you think, oh my God, what was I doing there? Yeah. But other people will probably see it before you do.
That's true. But I guess over the past few months, that's been harder for people. If you're a business owner and you live alone and you've been isolating, then that's just not available to you. Well, on a physical level, maybe through calls like this potentially, and people may be able to see that. But that day-to-day interaction with people limits the kind of response to EQ stuff, I would say.
It does. I think one of the things that I'm not great at asking for help, and I know that. And I get to a point where I think, why am I holding all of this? Why aren't I talking to anybody? I mean, I advocate talking about things, and I'm not talking to anybody about that. So I need to practice what I'm preaching. And I think recently, over the last few months, actually, we're having to make more of an effort to ask for help and more of an effort to say, I'm not feeling great, because as you say, you're not having those kind of incidentals. You're not bumping into people or seeing them in the office or catching up with them in the same way that you used to. So I think we almost have to take more responsibility to step out and say, actually, I'm not okay at the minute. I need some help.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, with the sort of technology that's available to us now and to people now, that maybe has made the past few months a little easier than it would have been 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But I guess you just work with what's in front of you, don't you? And
yeah, and it's being more conscious of it. I think we have to be more conscious of a lot of things. If we're managing people, we've got to be more conscious of checking in. Yeah. If we need to ask for help, we need to do it. Whereas before we might leave it for much longer. Now we're actually having to think about it more consciously.
Yeah, it's great. That's really nice points there. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so I like images, can you tell? So one of the things about recognizing the signs and symptoms in others is knowing what they are, and they're so individual. So, if I put all the signs and symptoms on one slide, it would just be like, whoa, it's overwhelming. And actually, you look at them and think, oh, we've got 5 or 6 of those just sitting here looking at it. So, we all have signs and symptoms of not doing brilliantly and feeling on top of the world, and then maybe not feeling so good. So what we're seeing more of at the moment is burnout, and that has actually been recognised now as a condition, work-related condition. And burnout, you can see the people start to withdraw. There's more negativity, more cynicism. A lot more lethargy, not being able to engage with things, feeling motivated as well as probably they used to, and burnout comes from just keeping going. And we're seeing that a lot from business owners and people who have worked throughout lockdown and carried on. Now, we're seeing it now. Between now and Christmas, I think we're going to see more and more of that. So, recognising how people are presenting and noticing changes, and also noticing changes in yourself. If you start to feel like, I just can't be bothered, or your mind starts to go into things like, we call it catastrophic thinking. So you start to think about the worst case scenario and prepare for that, which 99% of the times doesn't happen. We waste an awful lot of time and energy thinking about that, worrying about it and feeling anxious. But it's almost like if I'm prepared, then nothing can catch me out. So we start to play games in our heads about how we need to cope. We might be feeling more emotional. That might come out, just start watching telly at night. It might be that you see something on social media that you feel more emotional about than you normally would. Just not feeling quite as steady as maybe you have done. Feeling angry about things. We also see the signs in physical illness, so more headaches, kind of migraines, or feeling tight in the chest and palpitations, skin conditions, eczema, those kinds of things. These are the things, hair loss, if it's really extreme. So there's lots of different physical symptoms, and often our bodies will tell us more physically before they do mentally. So we might see that, tiredness and fatigue kicks in. We might feel, actually, we have a few days off and we get ill. I mean, how many times has that happened to people where you keep going, and then you have a few days off and suddenly, you hit like a freight train with a cold or a sore throat or something like that. So just recognizing what are the signs and symptoms in people. And if there's a change in behavior, if there's a change in responses, picking up with people in your team, and encouraging that to happen for you as well. We are all in a situation that's unprecedented at the moment, and we don't all have the answers, so I wish we did, because at least then we would all be able to say, right, we'll do these 5 things and you'll be fine. It doesn't work like that, but it is a constant flowing process. And every time there's a new edict, new set of rules, something else that's done on a lockdown or whatever it might be, that creates more, going back to change, going back to control, going back to what we're talking about now, it creates a whole load of other responses. So knowing the signs, recognizing them, naming them and talking about them and checking in with people, checking in with them and just having kind of catch-ups just about who we are as people, not just about the business, is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Just not making it all about the business is really key. Just on, if you're managing people, and like you say, it's such a personal thing, sort of mental health issues, that kind of stuff, and everybody has different reactions to a same diagnosis potentially. But how would you suggest talking to somebody who you may be concerned about? So if somebody in your team who you think is on their way to a burnout or having some kind of mental struggles, what's the best way to approach them?
I think it's about who approaches them. So if you've got a really good relationship with them, then you're the person. If there's somebody else who's got a better relationship or a different kind of relationship in the team, then maybe ask them to just check in with them, because you've got to trust the person you're talking to. If you're the person having that conversation, then for me it's about a human level, like take the roles out of it, and actually say, how are you doing? And there's somebody in my business recently, and I just thought, she's backing away. I can feel that. I can see that maybe she's not feeling as good as she was. And I just spoke to her and said, I feel like you're not okay. I might be completely off the wall and I might be completely wrong, but I just feel like you're not. We had a really good conversation about tiredness and fatigue, and okay, so what do we need to do, and how can I help, and can you take some time off? And so it's just naming what's happening. And I think we can sometimes feel like, oh, I don't want to make that person talk to me about something they don't want to talk about. Yeah. And we avoid the conversation, and then that person becomes more unwell, and then they go off. And actually, being at work is really good for us. It gives us structure, gives us part of our identity. It's great for our motivation. It's great for our ego, all of that stuff. It's much harder to get back into work if you've gone off. Because there's lots of feelings about failing and all that kind of stuff. So nipping things in the bud, early interventions, preventative measures, having conversations, talking about where people are at, that's culturally where we need to be in businesses. And if you're running the business, that comes from you. If you avoid those conversations, then other people will avoid them.
Nice. I think it's the discussion point is key, I think, isn't it? Is knowing how to approach and how to talk to people, especially people that you're just used to working with on a non-personal level, but you become responsible for them because you're maybe spending more time with them than their family are in some instances, and so you have to sort of get over that hurdle and be able to understand the best way to approach individuals. I guess some people, like say, might react to an email or a conversation over a coffee or a beer, or some people might just like to write their issues down if you just leave a book somewhere, or that kind of stuff.
It's different people have different mechanisms. I think one of the main things is just being open and actually if it is just a catch up, or you schedule catch ups on a regular basis so you can track how people are doing, that's really important as well, so that you're not losing touch. I was talking to somebody recently who works in a small business, and they've been furloughed and no one's been in touch with them since they were on furlough, and that was in March.
Wow. Yeah.
That person living on their own, and you think that's not all right,
Is it?
No. So,
Yeah, having things in place, having processes and all that kind of stuff is key, I think.
Yeah, completely.
Great. Okay, I'll move on to the next bit.
Yeah, so tracking yourself. We'll talk a bit about breathing and tracking at the end, but I think tracking well-being is really important. So these are basic stuff. You know, we know that if I'm setting somebody from a mental health perspective, I'm interested in how are you sleeping, what are you eating, what's your nutrition like, are you getting out and exercising, are you spending any time outdoors, how's your self-care, you know, are you showering regularly, you know, all of that stuff, how much water are you drinking, how are you starting your day. All of these things sound like kind of quick wins, but actually when we start to feel like we're struggling, they start to slide because they feel like they take a lot of effort. So the basics are really important. So just keeping our well-being in focus. So if our sleep's being affected, what do we need to do about that? Can we manage our sleep in a different way? Are we on our screens too late at night? You know, is our brain still kind of buzzing, you know, till 2 or 3 in the morning with lots of ideas and thoughts? And I mean, that can be excitement as well. You know, you can be thinking about what you're doing when you're setting up a business, but actually we need rest because otherwise that affects our EQ, which we were talking about a second ago. So, making sure your bedroom's cool, making sure that you aren't on your phone all night, that you're not kind of scrolling through social media. Try and have a notepad by the side of the bed where you can just jot down ideas as they're coming into your head, maybe reading. We want sleep hygiene really, so you want as few things to lean on as possible to get to sleep. But there are certain things that work for all of us, you know, and each of us. So it might be reading, it could be just breathing techniques, you know, but getting our sleep right is important. Recognizing that when we're feeling stressed, we tend to go towards maybe alcohol, maybe sugar, maybe more fatty foods, more convenience foods, because we feel we haven't got time to look after ourselves. But then we start functioning properly and then we start needing more of that. So there's a lot of things we do that actually sabotage our well-being. And I think when you're running a business and you've got an awful lot of things to try and, you know, you're spinning a lot of plates and there's a lot of people looking to rely on you, even if you're just starting out, there's still that pressure of, I've got to make this work. Keeping these things in focus can really help to keep your resilience levels up, so that you can keep going for longer. And it isn't about crashing and burning, it's about managing yourself all the time. And recognizing, actually, I'm usually really good at eating really well, but I've noticed this week I've really let that slide, so I need to pick that back up again. And just make a decision about it. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And if it's about exercise, I think sometimes when we're feeling really busy and overwhelmed, it's like I can't be bothered to exercise on top of everything else. I'm trying to make a decision about going to exercise. And what I always say is just go and do it. Just go for a walk, put some trainers on. Don't think about it too much, just because your head will catch up with you whilst you're doing it, and you'll never regret it. You never regret doing some exercise. No one ever says, oh, that was a terrible walk. So, so, you know, go and do it. So all of these things on here, and there's lots of others, but your engagement at the bottom there, is just tracking how are you engaging with other people. Are you withdrawing? Are you over engaging? You know, needing that kind of reassurance and avoidance of how you're feeling. Is it okay? Is it fairly balanced? And that fun element there as well. You know, we have to kind of create fun at the minute. It's not, you know, we're often working from home or we're doing things in isolation. So when was the last time you had fun and proper belly laugh? Because that's also important as well. You know, it's all about the balance to go with that.
That's really interesting. I think the engagement one with other people is something I maybe hadn't thought about previously. I think if you're in a position where you can get honest feedback from your staff or your team members as well, just on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or whatever works for you, just going, okay, how have I been with you or with the business over the past week? Maybe they could give you an idea of how you're perceived, because I guess your internal perception of how you're behaving is often very different to other people.
Yes, you don't see yourself as others do you.
Right.
I was talking to somebody today, she's a leader. I was talking to her this morning and she was talking about, you know, her having those conversations with her team, you know, because she knows she functions at such a high level, you know, ideas and wants things to move quickly, and not everybody functions like that. Some people need a bit of time to reflect. Some people need a plan, you know, some people need to know what the steps are. Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. I think sometimes I know with my team, a few weeks ago, I said to them, this is what I've got on my plate. This is where I'm at. I need you to help me, can we do that? And then I'll help you, and then we'll figure it out. We're in this together. And they all came back and said, I'm really pleased you said that, because we were all beginning to think, actually, we need to put the brakes on a minute here. Yeah. So the honesty around you is really important, that people can say that to you. Actually, can you stop? Or you love it when you do this, or whatever.
I think that's the thing, and you often find that you're having the same thoughts, like you say, as other team members, or indeed your boss as well. They're just like, I don't want to seem as though I need to slow down things, and everybody else is thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah. I felt if I say this, everyone's going to go, oh, thank God for that. I can put my tools down. But it's that honest communication, and back to that authenticity we were talking about at the beginning. We're not robots, and we need help sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing it like we just done with this. I kind of sense of humor about it as well, not seeing it as a negative issue, just seeing it as we're all going through in whatever stage we're at. It's something that you just need to keep in mind and discuss.
I think the other thing just to say with that is it's temporary. But however if you're feeling overwhelmed and feeling, it is a temporary thing. All of these things are temporary. We don't stay in those places for long, and sometimes even when you're in it, it's just good to remember that this will be different.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, so this is a tool that I use in trainings, and we use this with clients as well. And it's something I've developed over the years around self-care, because I think in terms of our culture and society in the UK, self-care, I don't know about anybody else, but what I grew up with was, you look after others before you look after yourself. And so trying to keep ourselves grounded and aware of our own levels of self-care can be quite tricky. So I've done this to kind of capture some of the things that people might want to think about. So if you imagine that the middle point of that wheel is 0 and the outer edge is 10, and then really what I get people to do is just draw a line across roughly where they think they are. So for example, if finances are a 5, you put a line halfway down that segment. If work-life balance is an 8, then it's higher up towards the edge. And we go all the way around and then colour in between the 0 and the number that they've chosen and drawn across. And it gives you a real visual of how you're doing at this moment in time. It might be different, might have been different a month ago, 6 months ago, it might be different in a month's time, but it's about a snapshot of how am I doing right now. And each of these areas are connected to our well-being and our mental health and how we are responding emotionally. So if I just take a couple, they're about taking care of my space. What we often see is if people are cluttering their space or feeling kind of trapped in their space, then it's quite representative of what's going on mentally and emotionally. And, we all know that clearing out, a wardrobe or a good cupboard or whatever it might be feels really good. But if your desk is piling up around you and things aren't getting resolved and they're not filed properly and all of that kind of thing, then that starts to impact on you. So simple, quick wins can really help to feel more in control of you, your space, your self-care, your well-being. I've given quite a few different ideas on here. And also about relationships, because I think relationships are really key when you're running your own business. If you've got people around you who are mood hoovers, so they literally suck your life force when you spend 10 minutes with them, and they are people you are with regularly and talk to regularly. It might be in your family, it might be in your group of friends. That can really impact on your fatigue, emotional fatigue and compassion fatigue. So spending less time with those people, but surrounding yourself with people who you really want to champion and they champion you, and you can have that honest relationship, can make a massive difference. I think as a business owner, it's potentially quite an isolating place. So you need your team around you, not just in your business, but personally as well. There's positive influences, those people who kind of give you warmth and affection. That's also really, really important. Because often if you're the boss, it can feel a bit like you can't ask for that from someone in the business. So you've got to find that somewhere else.
And it's another really nice tool, another thing you can physically, create and mark out and track changes as well. I guess if you have them do it every month or whatever, you can see where you've gone and maybe see differences in if you had a big event or had a big meeting or a big paper to produce or whatever it is, that through that week you can probably see where the different energies were or different issues were, and then figure out what you can do to change that, right?
You can definitely help to identify the stresses. What actually is what are your triggers? What impacts on you? If you're doing a talk like this and it's something you hate to do, then chances are a lot of that will be a lot lower, and you're kind of not in touch with what you need as much. But I think as well that this is, in some of the businesses we work in, they use this just to check in with each other in their teams. How are we doing? Where are we at now? So the visual aspect of it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. Okay, move on to the next slide.
So this links to the previous one in that if your wheel is very wonky, if there's big gaps, if you're a 2 out of 10 in a lot of areas, then you're not going to be able to run as well as you could do if you were giving some of those areas attention. It's not about everything being 10 out of 10. For example, creativity's on there. That might not be your thing. It might be completely your thing and you're not doing any of it. So it's just about assessing, how am I doing? Where am I at? And if I had 4 of these on my car, how far would I get? And if it's not that far, then what do I need to do to make a difference? And that might just be making one change, making one decision. I want to do more of something, less of something, stop doing something. There's no judgment with it. It's just really actually assessing a bit of a strategy about, right, where am I at? Actually, I can see that I'm not giving those things attention and they really help me. So I'm going to go and do something about that.
Yeah, I think that's, thinking it as the 4 corners of a moving vehicle is really key. That you're going to pull to the right, or pull to the left, or stop dead in tracks. Yeah, exactly. Where am I going to end up?
Yeah,
it's a really nice visual. Great.
Okay, so I think one thing to really kind of connect with is your breath. And this sounds a bit counsellor-y, but it's really, really effective. And I was conscious that Andrew was going to be on this call with us and obviously couldn't be here today, understandably. So I just wanted to kind of give a nod to this, really. Getting our breathing right is really important, that when we are feeling excited by things, or we're feeling stressed by things, or there might be something happened in your business where you think, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. Just breathe and practice breathing correctly. So we tend to breathe in the upper part of our rib cage and just breathe outward. And we'll probably do that all day unless we take a sigh or we yawn. What we want to do is fill our diaphragm with air. So when you're breathing in, and people can be practicing this as I'm speaking, breathing in through your nose if you can, and taking a breath in and counting for 7 all the way in, so your diaphragm is full as well. So your belly's coming out. It's an attractive look, but your belly's coming out. And then you breathe out for longer. So if you can breathe out for the count of 11, great. If you can't quite manage that, then don't worry. But your out breath needs to be longer than your in breath. And by doing that, what you're doing is triggering your parasympathetic nervous system. So you breathe out and you start to feel like, okay, I can feel where my tension is. I can feel my shoulders coming down. I can feel my brain clearing. Your muscles get more oxygen into them. Your brain gets more oxygen. And it just gives you a bit of a break from being on that hamster wheel of trying to make decisions and figuring out what you're doing. Just literally take seconds. And it's something to practice just on a regular basis, daily basis, so that when you need it, you'll automatically do it. And it really fits in with resilience, where for me, one of the main things with resilience is creating a gap between the event and your response to it. And breathing and stepping away from something gives you that opportunity to do that. We've all had an email land in the inbox where you just want to send a response back that's not going to benefit anyone. But if you stop, breathe, give yourself a chance to think, and then respond, it's going to mean that a lot of your decisions are far more balanced. So practice breathing. 7-11 is really helpful as a breathing technique. Another one is to breathe around your hand. So you breathe in as you go up, breathe down, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And you do that at your own pace all the way around. And what that does is means that you're focusing on something physical as well as what's happening with your breath. So whilst you're breathing, you can also scan where you're holding tension. So my favourite is my shoulders, or here generally. So bringing them down, figuring out where you hold that tension. I was doing a breathing exercise the other night with some people, and a lady said she holds it in her glutes. She said, I get really tight So we were like breathing into our glutes. That's what we were doing. So imagine where you need the breath, send it where you need it to be, but just breathe, just slow down, take a breath, 4 or 5 breaths. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Just to give yourself room to think.
I think it's really important. And, I'm a big believer in this, and that's meditation when you think about it, isn't it? That's very basic meditation.
As soon as you say
I know I don't know how to meditate. I don't have time to meditate. Like, I don't have a yoga mat or like bells to cling and clang. That's meditation. And I try to do it in the morning, and it really does sort of focus you, even if it is just 10 seconds, or if you can do 5 minutes, great. But those things, like you say, when you hit a wall, or if you hit a wall with somebody else, and I found it, right, let's just go and have a couple of minutes, just do the deep breathing, come back, and you literally can calmly see the issues and get around them, or help people out a bit easier. It's
it gets rid of all that. It gets rid of all the chatter in your head, and helps you to just kind of make a decision. I think I've done it in meetings. If you've got a desk in front of you, it's all right because no one can see.
I was just about to say, I'm really pleased that the camera cuts off here.
Yeah.
As you were talking through, I was doing it, and I was like, you can't see the belly going out.
Absolutely, I'm with you.
But it's a great tool. So thank you for talking to us about that. So we're going to move on quickly now to Alexis, just some of the resources which I think are going to be really useful for our attendees. And I'm just going to put the live links to these in the chat room. So as Alexis goes through them, the links are now in the chat room, and you feel free to sort of copy and paste those and use them at your leisure.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll just quickly whip through them. We put the website on just because on our there's a lot of information on there, but on the homepage we did a hub during coronavirus, and so on there's loads of information. There's blog posts, there's activities that people can do. You can do them with all ages. If you've got children, you can do them with them as well. But just go through, have a read, see if there's anything on there that's helpful. We're also launching something next Monday to support men's mental health as well. So all our socials are covering all of that and building up to that this week. So, just follow us and see what we're doing. And if anyone's got any questions or anything they want to ask, then by all means get in touch. The apps that I put on there are really great for just having them on your phone, accessing them when you need them. So all about creating literally headspace and time to breathe, time to think. And if you're commuting, if you're starting your day at your desk, just literally taking 2 or 3 minutes a day and just practicing a bit of self-care and a bit of time out. We don't really switch off when you're a business owner, and I think that's the thing. I know I have to. I say to my guys, I'm switching off. I need a break, because we need to create that space to be able to just have our heads not connected to things all the time. So having the apps can be really helpful, and it's up to you when you use them, and they can, you can explore different things. One of the things I would say is it's about the voices and the type of music. If certain things don't work for you, don't do them. Don't persist, even if it works for somebody else, because, you don't need to. There's plenty of stuff out there. Loads of stuff on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I think Headspace is the one I use, and it's fantastic. But my wife isn't a big fan of Headspace because, like you said, the voice annoys her. So it's just like, but there's some, like you say, that check those ones out if they don't work for you. There are plenty of others. So we're going to have a Q&A session in a minute, but just before we do, I just wanted to give you a bit more information about Tide and what we do. And just another quick note as well. Apologies about this, but I see somebody sent a question, but the Q&A button for me isn't actually, I can't actually see it. So if you could maybe copy, whoever sent the question, if you can maybe copy it and put it into the chat room, I will then be able to see it. The Q&A box for some reason isn't popping up for me, so apologies about that. But just a bit more information about Tide and what we do and what you can expect from us over the next couple of days before we go into the Q&A section. So if you're new to us and what we do, please do remember to head over to the website and have a look. If that is too much effort for you, we'll make it a little bit easier. We're going to send you all an email in the next couple of days, and on that email you'll have a link to rewatch this masterclass, which you can share with your friends and family or colleagues. And if you're not one of our members, there'll also be a link on that email to allow you to sign up and start saving yourself time and money. All you'll need to do is click the link, download the Tide app, follow the really simple instructions, and you'll be able to start using Tide for your business banking needs. For all links to our previous masterclasses or information about upcoming events, visit our blog site or our events page, links to which are in the chat room right now. We also, of course, have a YouTube channel, so please do find the link along with all the links to our social channels in the chat room as well. So go and subscribe and like and stay up to date with what we're doing here at Tide. If you're watching this on YouTube, do please remember to hit subscribe below, and all the links that we've discussed that will be in the chat room will be in the description below this video, so check those out there, as well as the links to the resources that Alexis was talking about too. And for those of you watching live and on YouTube, if you have any ideas of future webinar discussion points or speakers, please do let us know in the comment section or on the email address, which is in the chat room as well. Right, during the question section, I'll also be running a poll on just how you think we did today and the quality of the webinar. So if you have a couple of minutes, we'd really appreciate that. Now, I don't see the question that came through. I don't know, do you have access to it, Alexis?
Yeah,
wonderful. If it's something you feel you can answer, then please do.
Yes. So the question is, how do you find the confidence to approach people for a catch-up without feeling like a pest?
Right, yeah, good point.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So the way that I would approach that is to make it something that's part of what you do, as part of your systems. So if you are, have a weekly check-in that you do on a particular day of the week, and that then you know that it's coming and it's happening, and you start to kind of create a structure around people so they know that they're going to have that conversation. So I would say, if you're a manager of people, if you're the business owner, then say this is something new we're going to be doing just because of how we're working at the moment and what's going on in the world. So we're going to put these in every Friday or whatever you want to do, and so that they're in. So it becomes less of a feeling like you've got to kind of tread on eggshells, and more of a thing that just happens, and then you take away all of that uncertainty. The other thing I would say is that sometimes if you are really concerned about somebody in your team, it's really difficult sometimes because you can't help someone unless they want to help themselves. And I think that's where, as a manager, it can become quite difficult to watch somebody struggle. So if you're feeling like you're seeing that, then, and you feel like you've kept asking and you're not sure and they're not kind of responding back to you, then just say, I feel like I'm being a bit of a pest, but I really am concerned that you're okay. And actually, actually name that. Because they'll probably say, oh, no, I don't see that at all. But it's your perception of asking the question, which will get in the way of you asking the question. So just be as upfront as you can be. And like I say, if you've got a structure, great. If you haven't put one in place, if you want to check in with somebody and just monitor how they're doing, then, I think it's about just saying that and being honest, really. And if they don't want to, they have the choice not to, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well, that there's no pressure. Like there's the option there for them, but nothing negative is going to happen at work if they don't feel it's the right thing for them to do, right? Yeah,
and that's often the reason that people don't come forward, is because they think there's going to be some repercussions. And my experience in businesses, that's not what businesses want. They want to support people in the main. So, it's fostering that, really.
One more question has come in. How would one reboot after a burnout? Is there a trusted method?
Rest. I think with burnout, it's taking time. So if say, for example, you've got to do your day job, you run a business and you have no choice but to keep doing that. I think there's always choices. I think it's recognizing actually what you need. So taking some time out, maybe working differently, maybe smarter rather than longer and harder, trying to actually saying no to things that actually don't help you or that you get distracted with. I had burnout probably 10 or 11 years ago now, and was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue syndrome at the time, and I've completely recovered. But it was because I was juggling. I hadn't got my own business at the time. I was working for somebody, but I wasn't enjoying the work, and I had a manager that was becoming quite difficult to manage myself. So I also had a husband who was waiting for surgery, 3 young children, the whole thing. I was just like, ugh. So I kept going as long as I could. And when I changed jobs, I went into a new job and just thought, I'm going to do the minimum I need to do. So I literally just did what I had to do to then recover. Took lots of supplements, vitamins, minerals, lots of things to boost my immunity, and took probably 6 months. In reality, I didn't do anything socially. I literally went home, sat on the sofa and did the bit minimum that I had to do with the children in terms of feeding, dressing, bathing, that kind of thing. I asked for help from friends who could help as well. Burnout is a real sense of exhaustion. It's a complete fatigue. Everything's burnt out. Your cortisol levels are low. Your adrenals aren't working properly. So you've got to give yourself a chance to recover for that. But in my experience, although you might be feeling less engaged with things around you, actually, if you reduce what you're engaging with, that can really help. Don't feel that you've got to be all things to all people all the time, because there'll be things that you do that don't help you in that way. Yeah, so being realistic.
And I think the underlying thing that's been going on throughout this great session is honesty as well, isn't it? Just being able to go, look, I've had this burnout with family, friends, colleagues, whoever you think needs to know. And then, you know, if you say you can make something, or you can go somewhere, and then all of a sudden, you know, 5 minutes before you have to say you can't, then there's that understanding, rather than you feeling added pressure of stuff, which is a vicious circle, right?
I think there can be a kind of sense of shame that actually I can't do this. I haven't got the capacity to do this, but it's just the reality. And I always think, well, the sky didn't fall down. Everything's still ticking over. It's all okay. You know, you've got to put it in perspective. What we get caught up in and what we feel we've got to be available for, you know, often we don't need to be. We just feel that we should. Yeah. We have a lot of shoulds and oughts that we feel we should meet. And especially when you're running your own business, I think. So, being kinder to yourself and just giving yourself some time to recover. And like I say, eat well, plenty of water, lots of rest, booking time out, taking time off, handing your mobile to somebody so they can look after things for a few hours for you. You know, all of that stuff. It's important, and it does feel a bit alien if you're used to managing, which is generally what happens. People who are used to managing are the ones that burn out. Yeah. Then, you know, and I understand that, but it's essential for recovery, really.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Listen, I think Andy says thank you. Awesome advice. Thank you so much. So obviously, we agree with that, Andy, as well. Listen, I think that's a great place to finish for today. Alexis, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been a really, really interesting session, really beneficial, with some great insights. Thank you for our attendees who turned up as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube or through our on-demand service, great to have you along as well. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, attendees. Alexis, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again at a future masterclass in the next couple of weeks. Thanks so much.
Thank you.